Ahoy! It's your boy. Today is September 11th, and ironically, on a day that we're supposed to never forget, I actually forgot to record this entry. So this is coming a little late, and I apologize for that. But I went to bed at 11 p.m. last night, and as I was laying there, I had this niggling sense that something was not quite right, and then it hit me. It was like that moment in the movie Home Alone where the mom's on the plane and she sort of wakes up and goes, "Oh gosh, I just feel like we're forgetting something," and then she just goes, "Kevin!" It was like that, but I woke up and went, I don't know, personal journal was what I shouted. So this is coming a little late, and I apologize for that, but that's okay. I don't know if this is good or bad, but I just had therapy, so I'm going from 1 hour of talking to another hour of talking, and although it was a very productive session, I am sitting here feeling like I'm not sure if I have much to talk about. So although this is late, I'm also giving myself permission. If I really feel like I'm spent and I want to end early, I will do that. Although I'll also push myself a little bit and see if we get a full hour here. I have to admit, it's only September and the weather hasn't really turned yet. And yet, for the last week, I have felt the onset of my seasonal affective disorder. And I always hate saying that. I always feel a little embarrassed saying that. One, because seasonal affective disorder is just awful because its acronym is SAD, which I find very infantilizing. But it's true. I just know that my mindset is starting to kind of change, which is like this morning I was leaving for school and I've actually been having some trouble with my bike. I had a flat tire one day, which prevented me from going to one lecture. And then when I fixed that, I sort of had biked home kind of later that week, and I looked down and I realized my rear wheel was about to fall off. And I just thought, how catastrophic would that have been? Or sort of when I leave school, it's kind of downhill. I was like, how catastrophic would that have been if my fucking wheel fell off in the middle of writing? So I sort of adjusted it. But as I was leaving this morning, I did have that thought. I was like, God damn it, my bike sort of falling apart. And it was just one in a sequence of sort of frustrating thoughts I had since I woke up that morning. And it's like I always know that I'm getting depressed when I wake up and my first thought is just kind of frustration and just thinking oh, how am I going to get through today, and just feeling kind of beleaguered. And yeah, so at that moment I realized I was probably officially in my seasonal affective disorder. And then the next thought that followed was, I need to start using my light. Actually, I'll turn it on right now. I have one of these, I was going to say UV lights. I don't think that's right, actually. Oh, excuse me, but you're supposed to have these these lights that you put on, and it's supposed to help you feel better. Although I don't know that I've ever noticed a meaningful difference since using them. But I have one, and I use it regardless. And but yeah, my other frustrating thought was, that piece of shit never works. And I thought, wow, I really am a curmudgeon. I really am turning into a Scrooge of sorts. But but so be it. I'm sorry, actually, as I'm talking, I'm realizing my throat is pretty much cached. Normally at the end of recording one of these, I'm losing my voice, but I think after an hour of therapy and now trying to do this, I think I'll need to be on vocal rest for a little while. But yeah, I was sort of talking about that in therapy where I was like, yeah, I feel the onset of the seasonal affective disorder. And I actually think it's been exacerbated. I actually had my last day of work on Wednesday, and I had a nice send-off from some coworkers. But what has been kind of percolating and has kind of reared its head since my last day is kind of a little bit of fear of the bumpers kind of coming out of the gutters in my life, so to speak, which is like when you're a kid and you go bowling, they'll put those bumpers in the gutters so that you never throw a gutter ball. The ball just kind of keeps going down. The thing is just more fun, right? Because otherwise kids would just be chucking the ball in the gutters the entire time. So to make it more fun, they just put those kind of safeties in place. And I actually kind of approach my life that way sometimes, which is like speaking of infantilizing, I kind of infantilize myself, and I kind of treat myself, and my self-talk is kind of centered around the idea that I'm not a very capable person, and that I need this kind of scaffolding or structure in my life, or else I'll just sort of go to bits because I sort of tell myself like every impulse I have is like probably not good for me and self-destructive. And the spoiler alert, the plot twist is that's actually not true at all. But that's the way I sort of treat and talk to myself. And so, as the end of work was coming, I did have this kind of fear of like, man, what are you going to do with that free time? And part of that is I've been, pulling in more structure around my language study. So I got the program I went to over the summer has reached out to all of us and offered us like continuing education for free, which is phenomenal. So I'll be picking up on that presumably in a couple weeks. There's like a language exchange program through my university, and there's like a language pod, a group of people that meet every Friday to speak Mandarin. And so I'll be meeting with them. And also they've connected me with some language partners, which I can meet with throughout the week and practice speaking Mandarin. So, I've told myself that I'll be using this time to do more of that stuff, which is good. And I've also been doing more music stuff. I probably mentioned like messing with synthesizers, but also spending more time in Ableton and working on music in there. And not like really like writing songs, but just like recording song ideas and just trying to be free and not cerebral about it and just like have fun, which I really enjoyed. Right. And so that's good. Right. That's a good thing. But I have to be honest and admit that I have this other kind of like golem inside of me, which looks when I see myself having fun, that I start to like tear myself down a little bit and I sort of talk shit to myself, which is like, there are so many things I enjoy doing, which to me make sense and are fun, but I feel like because they don't have like a practical purpose or, it's not like, they just feel like they'd be very hard to justify to other people, like, well, what's the value? I sort of treat things like making music or even like practicing Mandarin or things like that. I treat it like playing video games or something like that, which like, it's fun for me and I see a lot of intrinsic worth in it, but I just worry that like other people looking in would look at how I'm spending my time and what I'm doing and thinking of it as like a complete waste of time. So yeah, even though I'm having fun, even though I'm ostensibly have the ability to enjoy myself a little bit more, there's a sort of I don't know, mounting insecurity at the same time. So yeah, I think that was just kind of at the center of what I was talking about in therapy, and the real reason that is important is because I don't know if I talked about this on the sort of last installment, but grad school applications are kind of looming for me right now, and the one that's kind of looming the largest is this Fulbright scholarship, which is very prestigious, and if I got it, it would be great. Presumably, it would certainly be impressive to some people. I was going to say a lot of people. I bet actually most people who stumble on this might not even have heard of Fulbright, but it's just it's a kind of a prestigious thing, and so I've just sort of assumed that I would go for it. It's a Mandarin taught graduate program at Tsinghua University in Taiwan, studying Chinese. And that's great. Tsinghua is like the number 2 university in Taiwan, right after Taida or Taiwan University, which is in Taipei. And but the problem is that Tsinghua is in Hsinchu, which is this small town on the west side of the island. And living out here in the Bay Area, we have a lot of companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter and basically all the major tech companies, Apple, right? So all the major tech companies in the world that you've heard of, most of them have their home base like right up the street from me. And a lot of that is centered around places like Menlo Park, which are they're not really cities. They're just like centers of commerce where people go to work, but nobody really, there's just nothing there, right? There's no like intrinsic culture there. It's just not a very exciting place to live. It's a place to go and work, but not really a place that you would want to live. Well, that's where Tsinghua University is. And so although it all sounds good on paper and all sounds very prestigious, the idea of actually spending 2 years there is not very appealing to me. Because I've been there. We had like a field trip over the summer to go to this, I don't remember what they called it. It was like a technology museum or something like that. And it was very interesting. But it literally just looked like Mountain View, California, which is just businesses and like not much else. It just looked not a very exciting place to spend time in. But yeah, the idea of like spending 2 years there was not very appealing to me. So, the last couple of weeks I've actually had a thought, well, okay, well maybe you don't apply. And maybe for you this is an obvious thing to sort of think about, but at the end of the day, if you don't want to go there, or if you don't see yourself spending time there, like, why do it? And that's a great point you bring up. That's a really compelling argument. And yet the point I'm trying to make is that it just reminds me and sort of clarifies for me that actually a lot of what I feel compelled to do, or the things I put pressure on myself to do, actually have nothing to do with what I want to do. But like the overriding thing in my mind oftentimes is like, what should I do? Not what do I want to do, but what should I want to do? Right? And so as I'm like putting in my 2 weeks at work and ending my time there and giving myself more time to, do school things, or actually to do nothing, like to do music stuff or exercise or things that I would enjoy, it feels like like I'm fostering this very dangerous idea of like desire, or it's like a dangerous thing. Like as if I'm just giving myself permission, like, oh yeah, you don't want to work. Well, like, of course you don't want to work. Like nobody likes to work, but you're supposed to work. So you should be doing that, And yeah, you may not want to live there, but it's a good school, right? So like go to that school, go to the most prestigious one. Where at the end of the day, when I see myself in Taiwan, it's like, well, I kind of want to be in Taipei. I kind of want to be near the city. I've been there. I know the area. When I think about what I already enjoy about Taiwan, that's kind of like what I want to do. But I guess because, it's actually kind of weird as I'm saying this out loud. This sounds like a weird thought. But I was just going to say, when I give myself permission to do the things that I want, there's this kind of a release of pressure and anxiety. And I know that sounds like a very obvious thing to say, but the point I'm trying to make is that feels dangerous to me. Because again, if I'm operating from a place, or if my operating philosophy is like there's something wrong with me, and the things that I actually feel like I want to do are actually not good for me or somehow self-destructive, the idea of me giving myself permission to do the things that I want to do feels just that. It feels self-destructive. But I have to admit, there's, as I was in therapy and I was talking about, well, maybe I actually don't go to grad school right away. Maybe I just, I know I'll be in Taiwan in February for 3 months, continuing my language study. Why don't I just go there? And at the end of the day, I actually don't really even have to go to grad school. I can just stay in Taiwan and just continue my language study until I get a better sense of like where my skills are at, what I might want to do. And all of a sudden, this pressure starts to lift from me. And I was sort of taken back to this period I was at, like right when I was finishing up at community college and transferring to UC Berkeley. And when I first went to school, I was a psychology major. But I knew in my gut, like, for the next 2 years, I'm just not going to be happy if I keep studying psychology. I just didn't really see myself getting through the next 2 years if I was just taking psychology classes. And so in my mind, I had this burgeoning idea of like, well, I really like reading books, and, obviously I had this interest in Chinese philosophy. Like maybe that would be something that's more sustainable or more interesting. And I remember going into a therapy session, and that kind of came up, and I kind of like half-heartedly sort of mentioned that, but my therapist very enthusiastically said, well, then that's what you need to do. And although it immediately felt like this, sorry, I just kicked my desk here, but although that felt like immediately felt like a relief to me, and like this weight was lifted off my shoulder, I mean, I decided very quickly, like within that session, I was like, oh, well, it's obviously clear I'm going to be changing my major. It also felt like a dangerous idea, Like there are these moments where my therapist is on the one hand being very validating and very affirming and kind of giving me permission to do the thing that I think I want to do in my heart of hearts, but I also don't trust them. I think there are people in the world who are very skeptical of therapy, as if it's kind of like Rent-A-Friend program where you just kind of pay someone to be your cheerleader, and they're actually not going to be very discriminating because it's not in their financial interest, right, to be very discriminating against you. They're just going to kind of validate whatever you say and encourage you to do things no matter what they are, even if it's to your detriment, right? And some people, like, actually, this is going to sound insane, but I saw this, I only watched a little bit of it, but there was this video of Andrew Tate, who I'm sure you have strong feelings about, and I have a strong repulsion to for the most part. but he's sitting with a therapist or a psychologist. I'm not sure how the person branded themselves. Even as I'm saying this, I'm not sure why I'm bringing this up. Oh, I think it was, the premise of the video was this kind of like ostensibly not adversarial, but as if it was kind of, they sort of framed this video, this conversation between them as kind of a yin and yang type thing, as if these two people have opposing views. As the conversation went on, it kind of became clear that this therapist or psychiatrist or whatever they are is actually like an Andrew Tate fan and was actually like kind of affirming and validating things that Andrew Tate was saying that I thought were kind of disturbing. But the point is that I got an earful of Andrew Tate talking about how they're their own therapist and how therapy is for weak people and how he doesn't believe in the idea of depression and that yada, 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 yada. So I get an earful of that in life a lot, especially out here in the Bay Area. You have a lot of people who like are very much into self-optimization and like not throwing pity parties for yourself and like picking yourself up by your own bootstraps and that kind of stuff. And although I don't agree with that, right? Like, although that's not really I was going to say not my operating philosophy. The point is that even though that's not really like my belief system or my own personal worldview, that still is a part of me, and I'm sure that gets validated by a lot of other inputs in my life. But the point is that, even though I have these moments where someone's like validating something that I feel, there's also that golem inside me, that like, oh, my precious, like, oh, don't let go of that thing, right? Like if I let go of this pressure, like I'm sort of giving up on myself in some way. But the point is like flash forward 2 years later, changing my major was the best thing I could have done. I mean, I can't tell you, I've never had a moment where I was sitting in a psychology class where I was like, man, this is where I'm supposed to be. I mean, I found them very interesting. But I never once felt like, oh man, this is like resonating with me on like a fundamental level. I'm really lighting up as I think about it. And it may sound insane, but like I have had countless experiences like that in my, whether it's my literature classes or my East Asian religion, thought, and culture classes. I'm in this lecture now that I'm taking this class on Confucius. And so far, none of the information is new for me, just because this is all material I've really digested even before I returned to school. But I know it's new for a lot of people in the class. And although I can tell half of them are like falling asleep, I feel myself getting excited, And I guess the thing that, so I guess as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, well, then what's the mystery? Like, why are we even talking about this? It's clear that you know what you want. The point I'm trying to make is that one of the struggles that I face, and maybe you experience the same thing, is it's when I'm in a vacuum, when I'm left to my own devices. If it's just me, it all makes sense. I actually know what I want to do. I know what excites me. I know what feels worthwhile to me. But just by virtue of living in, the world, I guess I feel this like deep insecurity and ambivalence about giving myself permission to pursue and do the things that I want to do, because it's not clear to me what practical value or currency they have in the real world. And that's not nothing. Like, right at the end of the day, we have to feed ourselves and we have to get by in the world and we have to land somewhere. But it's just that it's constantly reminded that I make my life exponentially more difficult than it has to be, because of some imagined voice that I inject into my own psyche that really doesn't even exist. I mean, I'm not saying it comes from nowhere, but I'm just saying I'm just like torturing myself, with this criticizing voice that I just feel like life would be exponentially easier. It would be so much simpler if I just let it go, And actually letting go is actually the perfect word for it, because it's like, as I'm thinking about these grad school applications, even saying it feels dangerous, but I'm like, well, maybe I actually don't go to grad school right away. Maybe I just go to Taiwan and continue focusing on my language and let that experience kind of tell me what the next step will be. I immediately feel this release of pressure. And, that's a good thing. And there's a voice that's like cautioning me, as if that's somehow a dangerous thing. But yeah, freedom is actually an important word that comes to mind for me. It's actually been contributing to my depression a little bit. We might unpack it. But one of the things, like, I stumbled on this documentary on YouTube. It's like an hour-long piece from the BBC on Jacob Collier. I hope I'm saying that right. Jacob Collier, Jacob Collier. I don't know. You might know who he is. He's like a very talented singer, musician, multi-instrumentalist, harmony, genius, right? And although his music is not really like my music, like I don't listen to it for entertainment, Jacob Collier is one of these like towering geniuses who like is very shaming to me, because I look at someone like that and I feel like, oh, that's who I should have been. You know, like Jacob Collier is like everything I've ever wanted to be, which is just like an undeniable savant slash genius slash best in the field for whatever he's doing. You know, he has perfect pitch. He has this crazy encyclopedic understanding of music theory. He plays every instrument in the book. You know, everything seems and looks very effortless for him, and he just seems like a really great guy. He's very endearing. So not only is incredibly talented, he's also like benevolent as well. You know, which to me is like, you know, we have this idea that like all geniuses have to be like tortured and evil, but then like you have someone like Jacob Collier who's like, oh, this dude is a legit genius, and they seem benevolent, which to me is like, you know, so basically Jacob Collier is like everything I've ever wanted to be. And the real reason I've kind of stayed away, I mean, although like I have to admit, like I don't think his music is necessarily my thing, I also have to admit that I see people going crazy for him, and that is actually kind of shaming for me, so I kind of steer clear of his music anyway, just because it just makes me feel bad about myself. But I stumbled on this documentary about Jacob Collier's life, and I just ended up watching it, and it's very, very good. But again, it's also very hard to watch because I feel like, you know, I am sitting here like in my golem mentality, like, oh, that should have been me or something like that. But the really important thing is that it led me to this like 8-hour long video, which I'm sort of chipping away at in chunks. He did like a live stream around the time of his around the time of the pandemic to raise money for his touring band and crew. And one thing that he's known for doing is people will send him videos, I think on his Patreon, will send him videos of them singing a melody or something like that, and he does these crazy harmonizations. You know, he'll add like 80 voices to it and just turn this kind of simple iPhone video that somebody filmed of them singing 15 seconds of a song, and he turns it into this like incredible orchestration. And so he did this like 8-hour stream where he just does as many of those as possible as he's like, you know, asking the viewers and the people he's streaming to donate money so that he can give it to his touring band who, you know, this was done around the time of the pandemic. So yeah, those people are basically out of a job. But the coolest part about this video is not just that, you know, the end product is always very amazing. The thing that I get absolutely swept up in this video, and I was watching this last night, I went to bed at like 2 a.m. because I just couldn't turn this thing off, was watching him work on his computer in Logic, and as he's coming up with these orchestrations, it kind of like reminded me of the producer I used to work with, Gowan Matthews, who, you know, the creative process for me is always very torturous. And like, it's me like brooding over a notebook and trying to be meticulous and exact and perfect. And it's just like, it's just a very not fun process, right? It's like I'm wringing myself like a bar rag, and it's just, it's awful. Like the initial moment of inspiration is always very cool, but then the rest of it is just hard, tedious work. And I'm always very exhausted at the end of it. And I'm not pretending that the creative process is not difficult for Jacob Collier at any time. But when you watch him work on these harmonizations, he is just completely free. And he's like working in Logic, and he's clearly, I mean, he's mastered the software. He has his workflow figured out. He's working in it very quickly. And you're just watching him stew and marinate and ride the wave of inspiration where he's not second guessing. I mean, first of all, he already has this repository of ability and capacity and knowledge and whatever that he's already, you know, I guess, yeah, how do I word this? I guess in other times I've talked about like the sengi, which is like this animal in Africa. I first stumbled on it like an ex-girlfriend of mine. We were like house sitting and probably getting high and like watching Netflix, and we were watching this nature show. And one of the animals that they were kind of highlighting was the sengi, which is like this animal that just sort of spends 75% of its day just like maintaining these little pathways throughout its habitat and like keeping them clear. And the only reason it does that is so when a predator sort of strikes, or when it has to, it has these clear, dependable pathways that it can sprint down to safety, right? And I thought, oh, like that's kind of who I am. The point I'm trying to make is that Jacob Collier already has like this repository of understanding, so that when it's time to get to work, when it's time to be in the sauce, he's just like ready to go. And so you just watch him in Logic, and he's just like stacking these vocal parts and drawing on his whatever, and he's like throwing down, and he's not being judgmental. And it's just like, it's fun to watch because you watch him literally having fun creating. It's playful, And it was just like, it's like watching someone just like be free and like flying. In a way, as I'm saying this, it reminds me of like seeing David Copperfield fly when I was a kid. It's like it's this very convincing illusion of someone doing something superhuman, so that you just go, oh wow, like what I wouldn't give to be that way, or to be able to do that. And that's like the exact same thing that I have when I'm watching this video of Jacob Collier like working in Logic, harmonizing these things where he's just like throwing down these crazy harmonies, but it's just the process of watching him work and the speed at which he works that I realize, oh man, I've been doing it wrong like my whole life. My whole life I've been trying to be this like perfect person, and like so much of my creative process has been about like making a masterpiece, or it's just this like tedium, the slow, tedious process. And just drawing on my experience with working with my former producer, Gowan Matthews, who was just like, let's just do it. I would come in with these songs, just voice and guitar. There were, skeletons of songs that took me forever to sort of, wring out of myself. And we would go in the studio, and by the end of day one, we would have most of the song done. We would have most of the other parts just sort of nailed down, And, at first, that was a kind of a weird process for me to be a part of, because I wanted to like slam the brakes and like take a lot of time and make sure we were doing the right thing. But like for him, I could tell he would like push back on that. He's like, no, man, we just got to keep going. We got to keep going. We got to lay it down. And if something's not working, that's fine. We'll just go on to the next thing. It was just always about doing what you wanted to do in the moment to not impede the creative process, to keep the momentum going forward. And I'm embarrassed to say that was so foreign to me. For me, it was like if you encounter an obstacle, you just bang your head against the wall until it sort of moves, right? But yeah, seeing Jacob Collier do this thing was just like being free, And so why am I going down this road? I guess on the one hand, I'm just trying to like talk about this insecurity I feel when I feel like I see that, when I see someone who is free. And it also goes back to this idea of creative courage and creative confidence, which is something I've struggled with my entire life. But to see someone who's in that, it's kind of shaming to see somebody, one, who's younger than you, but also just anybody at all who you feel like it really clarifies for you not only where you sit in the pecking order, right? Which is like, you're not shit compared to this person. It's a bit like that moment in the movie Good Will Hunting, where like there's the older math professor, and he has this kind of poignant moment where he says to Matt Damon's character, he's like, I wish I never would have met you. I could have just gone throughout my life thinking I was the best, resting on my laurels. He has this like Fields Medal, I think is like the Pulitzer equivalent for mathematicians or something. But it was like meeting this guy really clarified for him how he really wasn't shit, and there was somebody else walking around in the world who was like, everything that he actually wanted to be, like the real deal was out there. That's kind of how I feel about Jacob Collier. But the other part is like, that you've been doing it wrong. Not just that you're not shit compared to them, but you actually kind of made a critical error way back in the beginning that actually kind of set you down this path that felt like the right thing. This is the important part. It felt like the right thing. But it actually had nothing to do with what was best for you. Oh man, here we go. Here's where all the insight comes together. Isn't that life for so many of us? The most insidious part of like, and sometimes people roll their eyes at this word, but the most insidious part of our traumas, right? And some of the most formative experiences we've had in our life is not just that they wreak havoc on our lives in ways that are like overtly chaotic, right? Like someone who's just like lost in the throes of addiction because they face some horrible trauma and that's the coping mechanism that they developed. Like that's obvious, right? That's something that's in somebody's life that it's obviously like a bull in a china shop. Like of course that's maladaptive or something like that, if that's the right word. It's self-destructive. But the most insidious thing that we inherit is those parts of ourselves that we experience as our virtues, that we experience as good things. But it's actually it's that operating system, it's that framework, it's that worldview that's actually our undoing. It's not that we're doing good because of that mindset. We're doing good in spite. If we're doing good at all, we're doing good in spite of that mindset. You know? I mean, there's so many people who like go throughout their lives and they're like, I got to go to the right school and I got to get the right grades and I got to get the right job and I got to get the right income and I got to marry the right person. And at the end of all that, I'll be able to sit back and I will feel good. I've done the quote right thing. Now, this sounds like kind of a stone college kid rant, right? Like this, the way I'm sort of framing this is nothing new. But it's not a terrible example in that it frames it well, which is for most of us who've grown up, we've all like looked up in our lives and saw ourselves either having accomplished or on the cusp of accomplishing the thing that we were supposed to want, and it doesn't make us happy. You know? And it's so disappointing to me that I can sit here and say this, right? And I can know that to be true. And I can also look at my life and think of like a dozen other times in my life I've been at that crossroads and have always benefited from making the decision that is not predicated on what I should do, but what I want to do, even if I don't know where it's going to lead me. In some ways, especially if I don't know where it's going to lead me. But I just have to trust the process. I have to trust that it's going to take me somewhere better. And it's just endlessly disappointing to me that I live my life in this like Groundhog Day scenario of like, it's like how many times do I have to keep learning the same lesson? You know? I mean, before my therapy session today, part of my frustration was like, I'm sick of being me. Like, I'm sick of having to go into the same therapy session every week and talk about the same bullshit. And it's not always like the same insights. I mean, the frustrating part is we always arrive at the same insights. It's going in knowing that what I'm actually sitting with and what I'm actually needing to talk about is the same shit I've been talking about for 14 years. You know? And for me, it's this cycle of like, this very dangerous oscillation and uncertainty and ambivalence between want and should. Because again, I'm talking about it in very black and white terms, right? Of, the thing that you should do is the bad thing. The thing that you want to do is what you ironically should do, is what you really should do. The real should, the capital should, right? But I guess I'm trying to highlight, and I think a lot of us would do better if we thought about this, that the really insidious part is that we experience the self-destructive operating system as a good thing. And to actually let go of that. Although there are, again, there is a moment of kind of, release, or the pressure somehow gets relieved, but that feels dangerous. There's just another voice that's kind of seeing you kind of letting go of the status quo of what you're supposed to be doing. And it just feels, again, it's like the bumpers coming out of the bowling alley. It's like you could roll a gutter ball. That's scary. Yeah, poignant stuff. Yeah, speaking of not forgetting, yeah, these are the types of things I wish I could remember, and yet I have to learn the same lesson over and over again. So yeah, where does this leave me? It leaves me in this kind of scary spot where I'm seriously considering, not applying to grad school and just giving myself permission to truly just chill the fuck out in this last semester. Trust that I'm going to be in Taiwan in February, and just let that progress, or let that, let that encounter, let that situation, let that experience kind of shape what I'm going to do. But the scary part, again, is it feels directionless. There's a part of me that more than anything now, and I've probably been saying this for like a couple years now, but it's like every experience I have, I tell myself that that's somehow going to be formative for me. That's going to help me kind of get closer or draw closer to the epiphany of when I decide like what I want to be when I grow up, which is like an awful thing for like a 38-year-old to say, but it's like I'm waiting for the clouds to part. And, as much as I'm talking about like, oh, every time I've done what I actually want to do, it's led me in the right direction. I have to admit that I'm still kind of committed to this process, this exploration of like, just kind of following my heart and seeing where it takes me. And I'm still waiting for the payoff. I'm still waiting for a moment where I kind of see things coming together in a way where I really feel like, oh man, I'm really happy that I made that decision like 10 steps ago. And it's not just my major, it's a lot of things, part of it is romantic. I've been dating a lot recently. I had a date last Saturday, which was not great. It wasn't awful. I've actually never had, now that I think about it, I've never had like a catastrophic date. Or even the ones that weren't great. It's not like, I don't know, I hear horror stories. Like one will say like, well, I went on a date with a guy who like, I don't know, picked up another chick like while we were out or something like that. Or I've just never had like, I don't know. I've just never had those type of catastrophic dates. I mean, I've had dates where like I've embarrassed myself or I felt like I didn't put in a good performance or, I've shown up. Like I had this date in Taiwan where I showed up and the person did not resemble their photos whatsoever. But at the end of the day, I can sit down and like have a conversation with most people. And even though I may not want to move forward with them romantically, it's totally fine. And that's kind of what this date was. But again, I am, I'm eager for the moment where I either meet the person where I say, and this is not to disparage my last partner, it's just this idea of like, I made a decision to end a relationship that could have, gone the distance. And it was because I had this ambivalence, because for reasons I couldn't necessarily articulate, it was just what I wanted. I knew that it wasn't the right time. And so I made a leap of faith and ended things and trusted that I would look up at some point in the future and realize I had made the right decision. And so I guess whether it's romantic, whether it's my major, whether it's the course of my life in general, I'm kind of waiting for things to come together where I can kind of look back and go, oh man, I made the right decision. I think the sad part, in a way, I kind of already have everything I need. Meaning, when we look at, if I'm waiting for the kind of cinematic moment where the clouds part and I sort of have my victory moment, I could be, prepared to be disappointed, is what I'm saying. But I think there's a way in which this kind of mindset that I'm talking about, this constant fear about the future, or this kind of Gollum voice that keeps kind of like, I don't know, the party pooper voice that kind of lives in my mind all the time, that kind of destroys, even these fleeting moments of joy that I have. Like, hey, I'm really enjoying making music right now. Or, hey, I'm really enjoying like not having to go to work today. Or, hey, I'm really enjoying like watching this video on YouTube. There's another like Gollum in the corner of my mind that's going like, hey man, you're wasting your time. Like you should be doing something more productive or this or that. It really like spoils the moment, Like even when I'm sitting there in class and I'm going, hey, this is like so fascinating to me and I'm so glad I'm learning about this. And this is exactly the type of thing that I wanted to be learning more about when I returned to school. There's another voice that says, yeah, but what is it? How are you going to monetize it? Like, what is this for? Where is this leading you? And I'm not saying that those are, entirely stupid questions, but maybe they're questions for another time. Like maybe it should be enough to just kind of enjoy yourself in this moment. Right? Because there's something about that voice that it sort of comes in the guise or the costume of productivity, or reasonableness or something. But it's I don't know that it's ever really helped me. And it also, I guess in some ways too, it does, I guess it sort of discredits this idea of like, or it's just interesting to think about, like, why isn't the input that I'm getting from like, hey, I enjoy this. This is interesting to me. This is the type of thing I want to invest more time in. Like, shouldn't that be the only answer I need? Like they say, like, find something you love and you never work a day in your life. You know, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that everything is gonna make you a fortune, but it's just sort of interesting that that voice is like, I don't know if I'm how to word this except to say the voice that is the sort of ever skeptical voice, or the cautionary voice that's like, it's sort of like asking me to have some delayed gratification when actually the prize is like right in front of me. Does that make sense? As if somehow by following the Gollum voice down whatever path it's trying to lead me, then I'm going to have some eventual satisfaction or joy when I'm actually experiencing that in the moment. I'm actually getting it right now from this thing that is right in front of me, whether it's the video or making music or reading the Chinese philosophy versus a psychology textbook or something like that. And I'm not talking about the kind of enjoyment that, like, you know, sitting down and eating a bag of Doritos while you play video games. Like, there is a way in which, like, yeah, there are delayed gratification is a thing, right? So, like, not eating the bag of Doritos and maybe doing 30 minutes of exercise. That's the type of thing where, yeah, it may not sound like fun in the moment, but those are things that you should invest in because they do have long-term benefits. That's one thing. But the general input of your life, of like, how do you enjoy spending your time? What do you enjoy doing? What is a worthwhile thing for you to pursue? It's just interesting to me that I'm sort of am getting feedback in the moment that, like, hey, you like this. This is fulfilling. This is rewarding. That should be good enough right now. But it's like, what am I waiting for? Why can't I just let this be enough? Does that make sense? Do you experience that? What is that? I mean, I'm looking at how I'm approaching this whole semester, and you know, like today is a very chill day. I had like one lecture I had to go to. I mean, I'm basically taking 4 classes, plus I have to be working on this honors thesis, which I honestly have to start thinking about seriously. Um, but it's like 2 of the classes I'm taking are pass, no pass. And I put so much pressure on myself to, like, oh, I got to do all these readings. It's like, hey, man, let yourself chill. You don't need to do a work in that class. You really don't. Because even if you do, it's not going to count. You're just going to get a pass in the class. You honestly just need to pass. You just, you know, when you think about it, I mean, unless it was a topic you were really interested in, right? And the knowledge for knowledge is sake is not bad. But if you actually go for the A+, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, right? It's not going to affect your GPA. You're still just going to get a pass. So whether you get a C-, whether you get a 71% or 100%, or I should say, I guess 70 is the lowest you could get to pass the class. Whether you get a 70% or 100% is going to be the same. So, you know, would I feel comfortable doing 70% work? Probably not. But it's like, just do a cursory, you know, how do you say it? A cursory reading of the homework, show up to the lecture. You can probably trust that you'll do fine. No need to crucify yourself about it, right? So just chill. Yeah. Well, it's been a while since we've had a big bit of silence in one of these things. I don't know if you remember, but in our past iteration and previous entries, I think we've had up to like 5 minutes of silence at some points, but you know, we'll see if we can avoid that. Like I said, I told myself that if I run out of things to say, I'd let myself finish, but I feel like we're so close to the end here that I want to find something else to maybe light on so we can just kind of get to the finish line here. But I don't know. Maybe that's just another form of senseless pressure I'm putting on myself. Yeah, who knows? Maybe we can just sit here in silence together. I was saying, actually, as I was on this date that wasn't going well, I do remember them kind of asking me, just because it had kind of come up in our conversations before meeting in person the first time, was that I was sort of ending my time at my current job. And I was actually very, kind of touched that they remembered when they asked about it. But I sort of realized it was true as I was saying it. But I was saying it's a little bit of it's a little bit strange, one, to be 38 and like be stepping away from your job. One, just because I feel insecure about that, but also it kind of clarifies for me that this was actually a big part of my identity. Like the job that I had, even though it wasn't necessarily something that I knew was my calling or something I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I got a lot of, I don't know, like value or a meaning out of like the type of work that I did. It was sort of mental health related. It was the type of thing that when people heard about it, they were kind of interested in. And it was also a very kind of convenient way, even though I had my frustrations about the job itself, it was kind of a convenient way to present myself to people that also kind of communicated like my values or my interests or something like that, you know? And like not having that, it just felt like I kind of lost a way. Again, as I'm saying this, I feel like the theme is like how other people experience us, like if I'm the type of person who values like what I can demonstrate to other people or what other people will experience as valuable or meaningful or whatever, I do feel like I lost a little bit of that, I don't know, street cred or something like that. If I'm not, the me who is, either a crisis counselor or is training the volunteer crisis counselors that we have, if I'm not working alongside mental health, like if I'm just a student, like who am I? And actually I'm scared to go down this path because this is the type of thing I actually don't want to say like to other people. It's something that I just like kind of want to think myself. But I was actually thinking as I was watching this Jacob Collier video, I was like, oh, if because I'm saying like that is the person I always feel like I should have been, like real or imagined or whatever. I do feel like I treat myself and think about myself as like if I had lived the life I was supposed to live, if I wasn't fettered by, whatever adverse experiences I had in my life or whatever, that I had some kind of talent or gift that if I was just had the opportunity to like, really give myself over to it, that I just would have accomplished so much more than I did or that I'm capable of doing now. I'm somehow weighed down by my experiences and the ways that I've been like damaged and all this sort of stuff. Where am I going with this? Yes. I'm thinking. So yeah, I guess as I'm watching that, I'm thinking, oh, so who am I then? If I'm not that person, who am I? Oh, I'm just me. I'm just the 38-year-old student who's like not working, who's like just going to school. And I just think like, how is that going to be enough? Does that make sense? Like, I think we all live with this idea, and I think my therapist once I've said, like, that is the super ego, but we all live with this, like, personified version of ourselves, this idealized version of ourselves that we kind of live alongside. And in a way, we're kind of in a race with them. But we have this like idealized version of ourselves that is like living the life that we should have lived or could have lived, or is the life that is potential. And we're always kind of living imperfectly alongside of it and falling short of it. And that is the standard that we always compare ourselves to, and we make ourselves miserable by doing it. But there's this idea, like if I just work harder, or if I dig in deep, or if I finally give myself permission to do the thing, or if I finally whatever, that I'll somehow bloom or develop into this person that I always should have become. But there are moments that I have, especially as I get older, where it's like I'm sitting across or watching a video of someone like Jacob Collier, and I'm seeing someone who is just in another stratosphere of talent and whatever. And it's just apparent you're just never going to be that. You're just never going to be not just as good as them as what they're doing, but you just know in your heart, like, I'm not that person. I'll just never be the best in my field. I'll never do this. Like, for example, I also watched this documentary called The Alpinist, or The Alpinist. I'm not sure how you want to pronounce it. And I want to be careful here because I don't want to spoil things for you. You should just watch it. But it's about, a mountaineer, a climber, an alpinist, literally, a young person who would just do these. I mean, a lot of us have seen the documentary Free Solo with, what's his name, like Alex Hubble or whatever his name is. Free Solo some shit, right? It's a great documentary. It's very harrowing. It's very hard to watch at times because it's very scary. This kid does something that's like 10 times crazier. He does the same exact shit, but he does it on ice and like in the mountains. It's just absolutely insane. But you think, and this is actually another connection I'm making. You look at people like Jacob Collier and you look at this young alpinist and you think, what do they have in common? It's interesting to me that they were both kind of raised by single mothers, but they had parents in their life who encouraged them to be who they were. You know, if they didn't want to do well in school, their parents recognized that they had this, this talent or this inclination in a very specific direction. And their parents encouraged them to actually do that thing. You know, as I was kind of coming up in music, there's a very sort of practical example I could use, but I don't know if I want to call this person out or whatever. But a less sort of obvious example, or somebody I don't really have access to. Basically, I'm trying to say, I've met a few people in my life who I've sat across from, and I've been like, oh shit, you're the real deal. One of them that just came to mind right now is actually Jack Conti from Patreon. I've sat across from that guy and been like, holy shit, you actually have something I don't have. This kind of like, just a fundamental belief in yourself, right? And I don't pretend to know anything about Jack Conti, but I wouldn't be surprised if he actually had supportive parents or something like that. But the person I was originally thinking of was actually John Bellion. Was this dude who I opened up for a couple times, and I probably talked about him in other instances of this thing. But it was also very clear once I got to know that guy a little bit that actually his parents were incredibly supportive of him. And actually, if he wanted to stop doing music tomorrow and wanted to do something else, they would have just supported him, right? They were really just all about him drawing closer and following his heart and like doing the thing he felt called to do. And that gave him a kind of courage or whatever. Like, he had the wind at his back to kind of go deeper and deeper into this thing to just see where it took him. And if the BBC documentary can be believed, it seemed like Jacob Collier has that as well. He just had a mother who always fostered him to kind of go deeper into this thing. And whether or not it made sense in the world, or whether or not it could be monetized, or whether or not it mattered in the, quote, real world, he could just go deeper and deeper into this thing. And, this is going to sound crazy from someone who's had a lot of privileges in their life. In some ways, I've had more privileges than most people. But I do feel this kind of like this toxic inheritance of like not being allowed, not just as like a person, but I mean, even though I was supported creatively in many ways, I do feel like, it's hurtful for me to see that sometimes, because I think when I consider my own disposition, and I think if I was a parent without any prompting, I'd like to think that that's the type of parent that I would be. Just because it just seems so easy and so obvious. But the fact that I didn't have that is just very sad to me. And as I'm thinking about this kind of idealized version of myself, there is a way in which I think, like, gosh, if my life had been different, gosh, I could have been something else, maybe a lot better. There's this thing in life where everybody says, like, I don't regret anything about my life because it made me into the person that I am today. Right? And that's true. And that's great. And I actually don't want to discount that because, at the end of the day, life is just what it is. And we're lucky for the insights that we do have. And it's true that we wouldn't have them if it wasn't for our experiences. And yet, it also just seems empirically true to me that there are many things that, although we're happy that they happened because they led to certain insights, you might also be able to make the case that our lives would be better if they hadn't happened to us at all. And as I say that, that's kind of a bit of you could really torture yourself with that, But I guess, I don't know. Maybe all of these things are true at the same time. But I guess the thing I'm sitting with right now is, since we can't undo the past, what are we going to do with the time that we have? How are we going to let this be enough? I mean, every single person who hears this, actually, every single person who sits across from Jacob Collier is not going to be him, right? Like, there just are exceptional people in the world. Like, there are the Beethovens, and there are the Buddhas, right? And there are just people who, for whatever reason, and maybe it is for reasons they have no control over, aside from their intrinsic talent, we don't decide what parents we have or whatever. It could just be that the planets aligned so that this person was in such circumstances that their talent was fostered so that they could become the person that they are. Most of us are never going to be that. Most of us just have to be the consumers, right? Or the audience to those individuals. But even if that's true, right? Even if we're all just kind of relegated to the faceless masses of the consumers and the audience and the whatever, we're never going to be like the shooting stars. Like, how do we let that be enough? Because we can't just kind of like go hang out with the golems in the corners of our minds and just say, yeah, it all sucks. I mean, when I worked on the crisis line, one of the most, I don't know if frustrating is the right words, but in some ways, some of the most poignant conversations I would have, the ones that just felt especially challenging, was when I was speaking with someone who, not that they would ever articulate it or express it this way, or that they even felt this way overtly or was aware of this, but it was almost as if sometimes they weren't going to give up on their position until I sort of gave up as well and like drove over to the house and just like crawled into bed with them and just like gave up myself, And that's just kind of a recipe for, that's not going to work, right? We have to make the most of what we have. We're not going to be able to change the past. But what do we do with what we have here? And I'm trying, this may sound like a forced way to bring it back to the beginning, but I'm also seeing that we're almost out of time here. But maybe it just begins with like having the courage to, think less about what you should do and give yourself permission to do the things that you want to do. Because even if we can't necessarily get to the mountaintop, I don't know that we're ever going to regret at least getting at least partway down the path, right? Like, you could chill at base camp. You could say, fuck it, I'll never reach the summit. I'll just sort of chill here back at base camp. But I don't know that you'd ever regret seeing a little bit, right? Even if you only get to see a little bit of the mountain path. Like, I don't think you'll regret making that little bit of a journey. You know what I mean? So maybe that's the goal. Even if we never make it to the summit, there's no harm in at least setting out on the journey, right? I don't know. I'm trying to think of a super poetic and poignant way to end that, but I'm not sure that it exists. So I think we'll just have to leave it at that. I'll leave it to you to sort of fill in the blanks as far as that goes. So anyway, maybe a little forced, maybe a little contrived, but hey, it's called good enough for a reason. I'm glad we made it to the end here. Yeah, again, I'm sorry I forgot about this, but better late than never, right? And so yeah, I'll certainly try to be better about recording this on time and making sure that I get this to you when it's expected. Until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for your time, and ciao for now.